Welcome to the Thomas Industry Update Podcast, actionable information for industry leaders.
Hi, I'm Kathy Ma.
I'm Shawn Fitzgerald.
And I'm Tony Uphoff.
Welcome to the Thomas Industry Update Podcast. I'm Shawn Fitzgerald. For today's episode, I'm excited to revisit one of my absolute favorite interviews, a conversation with JP Pollard, the Vice President of Business Development at Zebra Sports, which is the official on-field player tracking provider of the NFL. JP works closely with the National Football League's coaching and analytics staff to power the growth of data-driven analysis and culture in sports. As we kick off the 2021 season and start stressing over our fantasy lineups, this episode is a rare opportunity to see behind the scenes of how the NFL's Next Gen Stats initiative collects real-time data on every player and every play happening in the game. Welcome to the show, JP.
Shawn, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I feel like our editor-in-chief, Michaela Tierney, teed this one up just for me. I wore a Pats jersey today. I grew up in Rhode Island, so I could not be more excited to learn how an industrial company transformed part of their technology into working with, arguably the biggest sports franchise in the entire world. Hey, to get us started, JP, let us know, what is Zebra MotionWorks Sports?
So Zebra MotionWorks Sport, Shawn, is a part of our location services division inside of Zebra Corporate. And so Zebra's had a heritage of 50 plus years of asset management tracking. Yes, we do barcoding, industrial printing and scanning. We also do a lot of business around the world with some of the largest retailers, healthcare providers, manufacturing environments in terms of asset tracking. And it was those core competencies that led us into an opportunity with the NFL starting in 2014, where we took our capabilities and our expertise and tracking objects and different things in the other environments I described, and transitioning it to players and footballs on a football field.
So you're approaching that 7-year mark of working with the NFL, or just past it. How did it get started? Did you reach out to them because someone at Zebra thought, hey, geez, we might be able to use this technology we've developed for industrial purposes for sports or something else? Or did they reach out to you because of your expertise?
Well, it actually occurred prior to my time to joining Zebra. I'm coming up on my 5th year. But I was still working in the sports industry. I used to work for Stats LLC, which is a major data and technology provider for sports around the world. So I was very familiar with what was going on in terms of the potential of tracking technology, not only in football, but in other sports like soccer and basketball, for instance. And so what ended up happening is the NFL opened up an RFP process, and a number of vendors from around the world participated in that effort. And there are, we like to talk about 3 specific technologies that work in the world of sports in terms of player tracking and athlete performance. And they're optical-based tracking, where you use cameras to identify either players' numbers or colors of their jerseys or kits, and also identifying the ball on a course or a field. And then there is GPS, which a lot of us are familiar with because we have that on our phones, on our person each and every day. And then, of course, Zebra's technology base is RFID, meaning radio frequency identification. We have tags and tokens that we place on objects, and in the case of football, players and the ball, and we communicate with a set of receivers that are installed around the perimeter of all the stadiums. And so ultimately, that RFP process led to Zebra winning the contract with the NFL and winning in the capacity of a partner of the official player tracking technology provider.
So these are in the shoulder pads, they're in the helmets, they're in the ball, they're in the compression pants, and everything that everyone wears. What types of data are you collecting right now, and how are the teams starting to use them?
Well, first off, for the players, during the game, the tags are actually in the shoulder pads. There's 2 tags on each player, and then the ball itself also has a tag inside of it. In practice environment, so we track every NFL game, preseason game, and that information is collected and distributed to the NFL, who then distributes it to the teams and their other partners, like media partners and other potential marketing and sponsor partners. We also have an ancillary business where we sell our tracking technology analogous to what's in the stadiums to teams' practice facilities. And so we have 10 teams in the NFL using our technology to track their players' practices, their effort, their workload and performance during the off-season training programs, preseason training camps, and also during the season throughout practices. In the cases where they're not wearing shoulder pads, Shawn, our tags are sewn into either the compression gear or the practice jerseys that the players wear. The information we're collecting, of course, is who's on the field and where they're on the field, the proximity of players between each other on the field, the proximity of a player near the ball, for instance. But we're also tracking speed and total distance traveled. We also do calculations and identify accelerations and decelerations, which is important to identify as players warm up and they come back and return from injury or they develop over the course of a season. So we're capturing that information. For the ball metrics, we're capturing velocity of a pass or a kick, and also the rotational information, RPMs for passes, or height for kicks, for instance. And so in the past, we're all, as football fans, have heard that a quarterback can really spin it. The tag in the football actually allows us to calculate in a quantifiable way the actual spin rate of the football. And so teams are using that for a number of reasons. Yes, they're identifying player workload and activity throughout a season during practice, of course, but they're also starting to use it more and more in watching tactics and schematics during gameplay. And we're finding more of that starting to happen over the last couple of seasons.
So it's interesting. There are going to be a lot of folks at the top of the draft this year looking at that rotational metric, possibly with the predictions on quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, and possibly 4, depending on if anyone trades up or not. So as you work with, there are 32 separate teams in industrial. One of the things that we find in working with thousands and thousands of North American manufacturing companies is some folks are farther along in their journey of accepting a data-driven culture than others. So we have really that traditional bell curve in manufacturing where folks are leaders, and then we have some laggards as well. The pandemic for us has been more of a forcing function that people have adopted to say, wow, we really need to change the way we're thinking about using data, because it's just so darn effective, especially working in the conditions that we're all working in right now. There are 32 teams. Are you seeing everybody diving in with the same level of vigor on this because they know that there's an edge to be made, or do you still see that bell curve?
Well, I think the bell curve does exist. I think the sports industry is very similar to enterprise environments where you just see an adopt, even us as consumers, right, and how we adopt new technologies and service capabilities. I think we like to say there's some in the area of 6 to 10 teams that are on that leading edge. And then there is the bell curve, and then there are teams more towards the tail end. But I'd like to clarify that description a bit more. We do like to say that when this data is really just an enriched set of new information that allows the experts in coaching and scouting and strength and conditioning and player performance. It gives them a new set of quantifiable information that they can use to buttress the work that they do and really to hone their decision making a bit more. It's not meant to be a silver bullet or a replacement for the expertise, the institutional knowledge, and the experience of these professionals. Now, when we do talk about teams who do use the information, you hit on a word in the question, Shawn, which is culture. I think it's a cultural thing. The better use or more functional use of the information isn't based on how much technology tools a team is invested in or how many people on their staff they have allocated to work in research and analytics. It's really more of a culture of information. This is an information-driven business. This is a new set of information, and how each organization wants to take that information and socialize it amongst their entire staff, including the players themselves. That's where it varies by team. And so when I talk about the bell curve, those 6 to 10 teams on the front side of things, it isn't just large staffs and people who spend millions of dollars on new technology and software to help analyze, manage, and visualize this data. It's that culturally they've accepted the information as an enriched set of information not to ignore, but to figure out how to implement into their everyday business processes. But I would say today, certainly in the 2020 season, all 32 teams in the NFL are using the next-gen stats data that the league provides through a team application each Monday after a Sunday game, and they're using it to a certain degree to evaluate not only their team's play, but also to do scouting for their opponents.
Interesting. That's so. If you're looking at those 6 to 10 folks, roughly a third of the league is really leading in the charge on it. And to your point, data is never a silver bullet or a magic wand to figure things out, but the more data sets that you can put together, the more interesting things tend to become. When we see folks on the sidelines with their Surface or the guys up in the booth, are they being fed your information in real time, or is that something that they get to bring together and crunch post game and then to analyze as they go forward?
Well, that's a great question. So this data is collected and available in just a couple of seconds. And in a practice environment, teams are actively using whether it's a Surface tablet or another device to identify the information so they can actively engage the position coaches, even the head coach, of course, or the players themselves during their workload, especially if a player is returning from play, they can have active interaction with the data because the data is available through RFID in a matter of seconds. In a game time environment, live information is not available either on the sideline or in the booth, so those teams have to depend on reports and analysis that they've done previously leading up to the game itself.
Okay, so it sounds like we may need to wait a little bit longer to use your technology to tell us if it's actually a touchdown or not, and not go to replay anymore and leave it to a human. So I'll still be waiting on that front. Wait, as you've deployed the technology, has there ever been a time when you've been looking at it and saying, geez, this just can't be right because someone had done something absolutely so amazing that it seemed that perhaps it was a technology snafu as opposed to someone just absolutely being that unbelievable of an athlete?
Well, I'd love to answer that question, but before let's go back, if I may, to the ball on the goal line and the ball placement. So this is really important. I mean, I work on the technology side of the business, and the technology today is capable of helping not just football, but other sports place and locate either players or objects very accurately. And so we not only have tags in the ball and the player, referees are also wearing tags. We also have RFID tags in the yard marker sticks and all the pylons around the football field. And so, what we have to do as a technology partner is just stand at the ready to help support the league in their research and analysis, because, not just the NFL, but these major sport leagues have to be very pragmatic and thoughtful about introducing new technologies and capabilities into the game for competitive balance, for integrity of the game, and also, you have to really take respect for the historical nature of the game. So technically, it's feasible that someday in the near future that a ball tag and having some combination of technologies could help us identify more accurately the placement of a football to support the referees, not to replace them, or if a ball crosses the goal line. Again, just more supportive information. We didn't have replay years ago. We didn't have 8K or 4K high definition years ago, and we see an evolution. So I think in the near future, we could see our technology and others help, move the game along and provide more operational support and efficiency.
Yes, I would never want to be replacing our good friends, the referees, because who would we all have to question if we did that, I guess.
It's part of the game, right? And I think we really value that. Maybe we take it for granted because we either watch or have seen it for so long, but they're an important part of the game, and I don't think a part that we'll ever see leave, and hopefully not. Now, you mentioned about, these anomalies that happen. There's a number of things. I have some key plays that happened in the NFL in 2020 that we can talk about, but we are also the official player tracking technology partner of the Reese's Senior Bowl, the college all-star game that occurs in Mobile, Alabama each January. And now, of course, the NFL teams in the scouting departments really like having that tracking data for these college players because, as I'm sure you're familiar, the practice sessions during the week are really the sessions where the coaches and the scouts watch the activity of the players and how the players interact with the NFL coaching staffs that are coaching each squad. And then there's the game itself. Well, a couple of years ago, we had a player, Montez Sweat, who's now with Washington. Montez Sweat had recorded a speed of 19.7 miles an hour during practice, and he's a defensive lineman or an edge rusher. And we looked at the number, and that number would have placed him at in the top third of the defensive backs practicing that week, and also top speed of all running backs. And so that really stood out. So we wanted to call back to our command center in San Jose. We were in Alabama. I said, did we get that number right? Because a couple of things. That speed's very high for a player in that position. And I should say, teams now, as they become more acclimated and fluent and comfortable with this information, you start to have ranges of miles per hour where you anticipate, running backs are in an X range of miles per hour. Wide receivers tend to be in another type of range. Linebackers in another type of range. Well, he popped right out of the linebacker range and into the defensive back and running backs. And so ultimately, we did verify that Montez did reach that speed. But here's the other thing to keep in mind. He did it during a drill where he was in a 10 and 15-yard space. Not like a defensive back or a wide receiver where they might be running 10, 15, 20 yards plus down the field on a one-on-one drill. So that was just a testimonial to his explosiveness and athleticism as a player, his get-off speed, if I may. And we also found that speed was backed up by a very good 40 time at the Combine a few weeks later. And that was a pretty incredible moment for us.
That's a pretty cool story. You hear, again, your stats get shared in almost every single game. And it's, folks like Montez Sweat or even Derrick Henry, such a huge athlete hitting amazing speeds, to your point, when they get into the open field that way. So all the information that you're collecting is being shared across for all of us fans at home watching on TV or elsewhere, or Red Zone or NFL Network here as we go forward. So it's been enjoyable for us on this side of the coin too.
Well, exciting for us too, Sean. So sorry to interrupt. I think, look, 3 or 4 years ago, we talk about our bell curve, right? The media partners for the NFL. I mean, a few years ago, we've been recording tracking games for 7 years, but I think we've all seen through the various media partners, slowly now Next Gen Stats has become part of the constant conversation and a reference point during the games. 3 or 4 years ago, that wasn't the case. Now, I think we've found, each of the media partners finding a way to integrate the Next Gen Stats into the storyline of the game, and it just provides a new dimensionality to appreciate not only the game itself, but the athleticism of the players. So we're also excited to see the increased usage of the information.
What do you think the next step is? You're collecting so much data right now with everything you talked about and what you shared. What do you think what is that next step for Zebra Sports in what you can collect and share?
Well, the Next Gen Stats team at the NFL, they each year, it's right around this time, they're working on new analytics and statistics and charts for us as fans and media to enjoy.
You get your request list out of this? Is this what I'm hearing?
We have a request list on our side, and we just patiently wait to hear what the Next Gen Stats teams comes out with. Each and every year, it's a bit like a holiday or a birthday present, if I may. You get the list of new stats and analytics that we can anticipate for the coming season. And so we're close to it. Very soon we'll know what we'll see in 2021. And each year, the aperture is being opened more and more from the Next Gen Stats team with some really interesting analytics. We started with just top speed, miles per hour, or the longest run, in yards. And now we have catch probability, separation information for wide receivers and defensive backs, the fastest sacks for edge rushers or defensive linemen. And so it gives us, another level of appreciation and opportunity to really, gain more excitement of the game and understand what's really happening at the field level. So for us, I think we just more analytics and more statistical modeling about how you can use this information. And I think on top of that, the ball metrics itself, the tag inside the ball was really a research and development opportunity for Zebra, working in conjunction with the NFL and Wilson Sporting Goods to engineer an RFID tag that is able to be placed in a ball where you can't hear it or feel it and doesn't affect the flight integrity of the ball. It took a lot of research and work. And just for context, this is always an interesting story. An NFL football weighs 400 grams. The RFID tag, which has an accelerometer in it, was engineered, it weighs less than 4 grams, so less than 1% of the total weight of the football, and it's melded inside the rubber bladder during the construction of it. So there are more ball metrics, not just velocity, but in terms of locationing and height that we might be able to see someday down the road.
Really cool. So just as we kind of wrap up here on things, how do you work internally to create that data-driven culture inside of your team? So it's kind of this very meta inception moment on it where you're doing all this amazing work for one of the largest leagues in the world here. How do you become a data-driven team internally on top of that to be able to continue to drive your group forward?
The first thing that comes to mind, Sean, is stay curious. Wake up questioning everything. What else can we do? How can we improve? What else is there? And not just in terms of, accuracy of the technology. What new capabilities can we build into our RFID tags? Are there other things that we can do with our instruments and our tokens that can add more fidelity and more competency and capability into the tool for the league and the players and the teams? And so that stay curious and question everything mentality is important. Something you have to, for me, relentlessly trying to improve every single day as a person, as a worker here at Zebra, as a teammate at Zebra, and as a client service person working with the teams in the league. Just constantly wanting to improve each and every day. And really, if you think about it, that really embodies the culture and the personality of the people we work with in sports. Everybody's always looking for an edge, always looking for a way to improve themselves, their team, the team unit. And so we really do embody that inside of Zebra Sports. And quite honestly, that's what I've all found really enjoyable in working with Zebra as a whole, working with our enterprise partners. So a relentless pursuit of how we can improve. And the other thing is enthusiasm. Why, be excited about it, and authenticity is attached to that. It's easy to be authentic and genuine about and have true belief in what you're doing if you have a love for it. We have a love for what we do in terms of technology and innovation, and we have a love for what we do in terms of the world of sports in the Zebra Sports Teams group.
Big takeaway, everyone. Stay curious. You can end up like JP and get to have fun all day and watch football. JP, thanks so much for being on. We really appreciate you and Zebra Sports spending some time with us.
Shawn, I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.